Much, Alex. And who's the perfect audience to find bugs and think about things? Product marketers. So here we are. Thrilled to be here today with fellow product marketer leaders, Julie, Vanessa, and Indy, to share more about developing your marketing career. And I think of this conversation as these are the things that you're not going to post on LinkedIn and tell the world. It's like these are the intimate conversations that you want to have and the insights to really unlock and, as Alex mentioned, demystify the career ahead of you all. So we're all going to kick it off with a brief introduction, share our name, our role, the best advice that you've received, and how you spend your time outside of work. So as I mentioned, Brianne, marketing consultant, spent many years at LinkedIn, consulted at SalesLoft, and most recently 3+ years at Nextdoor, building out the product marketing team, and more recently leading small business marketing. The best advice that I've received is to truly own your career. Sometimes that sounds a little harsh. Shouldn't my manager be doing that to the company? Sometimes you have a not great manager. Sometimes you have an interim manager. Sometimes you don't have a manager. And so really find those peers, coaches, and mentors that will give you the support you need and fill those gaps of where you want to grow. And in my spare time, I love to go hiking, get out in nature. On my bucket list is the Rim to Rim Grand Canyon hike. And with that, I'll hand it over to Vanessa.
All right, great to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Vanessa Thompson. I currently am VP of Marketing for the Twilio Communications business. I was also the VP of Product Marketing right now. We are looking for a CMO, so I'm taking over some more of a leadership role in the company right now, working across the whole marketing org. So that's sort of where I am. I'm based in San Francisco. I think those of you that joined a little bit early would know that, but based on my accent, it's not your first reaction, but yeah, I'm based in San Francisco. My best advice, this is going to be for the PMMs. It's not related to a career or anything. I just found this really insightful from one of my former product marketing leaders. And he had like a huge bugbear with weasel words. And if you don't know what a weasel word is, it is things like better, faster, all of those kind of things with zero context around them. So for all of us, because we're product marketers here, I felt like this was a good one to share. If you ever use those words, they have to have some kind of context associated to them. Faster, why? Or faster because, right? Like you never should be like, I'm faster than, anyway. So I thought that was really fun and interesting. When we were all back in the office, this is obviously pre-COVID, he used to have like a whiteboard that he would fill up with weasel words that people would use. And so it was sort of a name and shame thing, which I really liked. So my advice is for PMMs out there, just to be mindful of that, be sort of super specific and hyper-targeted with your positioning and messaging. How I spend my time out of work, I like running. I try and get some miles in every single day. So that's just kind of part of my life as a default programming, I think. I also like to make my own clothes. So I guess I'm sort of a fashion designer as well. About maybe 40% of my wardrobe is things that I've made. I make everything from jackets, skirts, pants, like all of the different things. And so I've been sewing for a very, very long time. Many years, and it's just something that I really enjoy. It's my like I don't meditate, I don't do yoga, but I do sewing, and so like that is my way of like relaxing and coming down.
I love it. Do you have a website? Can we buy your goods?
No, you can't.
They're unique.
And I don't think you ever will, because it is like my thing that I do to calm down. I think if I had to, like, I make things for friends and I make things for gifts, but if I had to make them on call, I think it would stress me out too much. So that's probably never going to be in the cards.
We're missing out, but now you have one of a kind. Julie, do you want to share more?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Towns. I am the VP of Product Marketing and Product Operations at Pinterest. And then prior to Pinterest, I led product marketing at Amazon on the ad side. So the weasel words advice, Vanessa, resonates very deeply. Amazon is a doc writing culture, and that was something that was drilled into us as well. I am based in Seattle, and I guess the best advice that I've ever been given, this is more life advice, and my dad gave me this advice, but I think of it often, which is, life has a way of working itself out. or just like things will work out. And I usually remind myself of that, both in situations where I cannot control the outcome and I just need to like go with the flow. And then also when I can, and really lean into what I can do to make things work out for myself or for my team. The other, just Vanessa inspired me with your weasel word recommendation, that I have another just like very specific product marketing pet peeve that I share with my team when I see it, and I see it a lot in product marketing writing, and it drives me nuts, which is that there are two versions of the word compliment. And most people, when they write compliment, they write it with an I. I've even seen like Samsung TV boxes, like the Frame TV, using it incorrectly. So it's like often used incorrectly in marketing. And I think most of the time in product marketing and marketing, we mean complement with an E, which is things are complementary to one another or synergistic, whereas complement with an I is like free or, given as a gift. And so I don't know if that's like pedantic advice, but I see it all the time and it drives me nuts. So just something to keep in mind. And then in my free time, I have a toddler, so I've spent a lot of time running around after him. And then when we can get out and have childcare, my husband and I love to go to live music, so we see a lot of concerts.
That's great. Go ahead, Indy.
Yeah, hello everyone. Always fun to be part of these panels and sharebird events. So my name is Indy Sen. I am currently building out ecosystem marketing over at Canva, the design platform. Prior to Canva, I've built and led product marketing teams at Matterport, WeWork, started my career off at Salesforce, and also did a bunch of hypergrowth startups, Box and MuleSoft when they were pre-IPO. And then also spent about 4 years at Google Cloud, building out developer and partner marketing for Google Workspace. So love product marketing. Have been shaped by it, and it's a role that I've always come back to. Advice that I've received, I would say, I think given the theme of this panel about developing your career, I think I'm aligned with like Brianne in terms of like career advice is. I think no matter where you are, I've also always found, I go back to a piece of advice that one of my business school professors gave me, Peter Kurzina, which was, right after graduate school, I was asking him about, where can I take my career? I want to do this, I want to do that. He's like, Indy, just focus on being the best X that you are right now. Focus on being the best at what you do. And, not every job is going to be cut out for you, but you will know when you put your best effort whether something is worth pursuing or not, right? And I think putting your best effort means that you take stock of like, how will you get things done? Are you proud of the work that you do? Are you having an impact? And if not, then it's probably for several reasons. And then where to like kind of take your talents and so on to like other opportunities. So that was I think a frame that I still use to this day because I was just we were watching the Super Bowl, and I remember there's this Deadpool trailer with like Wolverine, so Hugh Jackman coming back and Ryan Reynolds coming back, and I don't know if the movie will be any good. It'll probably be good, but the thing I know is that both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds are the best version of those characters in the movies, right? And I think that's probably why they come back. They already probably get paid a lot, but I think they really relish those roles. And so I think you'll know when something's cut out for you when you come in, you're using kind of like your inner genius to kind of get things done. And I'm not saying that there's so many great product marketers out there, but I know I like it. I know I enjoy the work, and especially with what I'm doing with Canva right now, I'm kind of going back to the roots, and it's been a lot of fun. And then things that I like to do outside of work. I'm a runner as well, but Vanessa and I were just joking about how many more miles she can run than I can. But I've done a couple of marathons, and it's always a great challenge, and I try to do one a year. Haven't planned this year's one yet, but I did New York last fall. It did kick my butt, so let's see if I can do another one. And then so I'm a runner, and then I also comic books. You can see actually you can't see it. There's a Batman collection on the third row of my shelf over there. I'm also a parent. I'm a dad. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. So I think right now my wife and I are just bracing ourselves for when our teenager is off to her adult life, and my weekends are really focused on family.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I love the takeaway, be your best self. And Vanessa and Julie really remind us words matter. And especially as product marketers that bring those to life and like are the source of truth for so many other channels, just to focus there. So we'll kick it off. We crowdsourced a ton of questions from Sharebird members. Here's the ones that were the top of the top, and then we will get to open questions at the end. But to kick it off, Vanessa, if you want to share with us how you operate at the next level, and especially as you've transitioned from leading product marketing to this interim CMO role, really your perspective of thinking ahead and leading at that next level, and then we'll go around from there.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this. I think as product marketers, we actually have a unique opportunity to operate at the next level anyway, just because of where we are in the organization and how we look across many different functions. So I definitely do not take that for granted. I have always been a curious person. Curiosity is a really big value at Twilio. And so one of the reasons why I think even just being able to be asked to operate at the next level, it's partly that we have a unique point of view across the company, but also, yeah, we're curious naturally. And that's why many of us are here in these product marketing roles. And yeah, I'm able to just really take a look at what's required of us across the company and make sure that we're connecting the dots in the right way across the team. And so, you know, it's not earth-shattering advice, actually. It's really just like show up every day, make sure that you're doing your best work, as Indy was saying, but also like keep yourself open to what's going on around you in the organization. If you sort of sit in your silo and you don't really kind of look up and around you, then actually you might miss something. And so I was chatting to someone else earlier today, actually, and shared this quote with them, which I really appreciate. Like, things move fast, like all of us are really busy. There's so much going on all the time. And so you have to get off the dance floor regularly and get on the balcony and look down at the dance floor and figure out like what is actually going on. And so you have to take that time for yourself to actually remove yourself from the action, take a look at what's going on, like where are things happening that maybe shouldn't be happening? What can we look at improving? What's working well? What should we do more of? Like all of those things are very simple first principles based questions that any of us in product marketing can be asking. And that's what helps get you exposure to the next step, right? Like it's very, very simple. And it's also just like really well placed for us to be able to do that in our function in product marketing.
Thanks for that. Indy, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you just said, Vanessa. You know, I think product marketing by nature, right, is just this discipline that's at the intersection of so many other cross-functional teams, right? Like product, marketing, and sales. I think that's where we live in, day out. So I think that gives us a really strong vantage point on any business and any product that we may be responsible for. And I think, yeah, I loved your notion of like, you know, being proactive and kind of like rising outside, you know, being on the balcony, so to speak, right? And sharing your impressions with the teams on from that view. So love that. I would add, you know, I think operating at the next level for me, maybe it goes back to, you know, like how do you put your best foot forward in everything you do, right? Is like, I think knowing yourself, right? I know this as a runner, I know what I'm capable of and those kind of things is that, you know, you need to figure out like what are the things that you really can truly operate at the next level at, the things that are kind of cut out for you. I'm a strong believer, like to this day, I've done a couple of these in over the past years, but you know, just assessments, personality tests, those kind of things. There's one that I've really liked of late called Working Genius, where it tells you, for some of those who are familiar with it, it gives you a sense of like your zones of genius, your zones of competencies, and then your zones of, I don't know what they call it. It's probably non-genius, but the things that you could do, but probably are not the right things for you. And like, I know there are a lot of different tests and assessments that do those kind of things, but it was really an eye opener because just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you're going to be the best to do it, right? Like in my career and as a manager, as a leader of managers as well, I always try to get people, including myself, to think about, constantly reassess, like what's my highest point of contribution, right? And I think if you have a sense of what that is early on in your career, the better opportunities will unlock for you, or the better ways for you to showcase your level, what you're capable of, and operate at the next level. And then I think the other piece of that is also I mean, there's no end to a workday, right? Like, I mean, we're living this era with like Slack. I'm working, almost everybody I work with is in Australia, so my evenings are pretty busy, but you have to compartmentalize, right? And I think if you put in a good day's worth of work, that should be a full sprint, right? So be cognizant, like, some of us are parents, so I remember when I was in consulting, I'd have like 80-hour work weeks. I can't really tell you that those are necessarily the most productive 80 hours that I could spend, right? I think if you know yourself and know your cutoff points, creating those parameters early in your career are really going to help. So whenever I end my day, I think about like my spin rate in terms of like the cadence, the things I wanted to knock out. Like there's probably some stuff that I didn't get to in my to-do list, but I've learned over time to be able to let go because tomorrow is you will do things 10 times faster when you're fresh and rested. So be cognizant of your spin rate, be cognizant of maybe your working genius, and I think that's how you get to the next level.
Yeah, I would love to add something to that if you don't mind.
Please.
Indy, we're both runners, right? There's a running analogy for me. It's part of what you just said, and so I wanted to share it, and hopefully this resonates with people that are listening. We as runners, you can't show up to a marathon if you don't have the training, if you don't have the base. You're going to have a bad day. And so I think part of what I took from what you just said was you got to get out there every day and do the miles and put in the work and the training. And it's about showing up every day and doing the miles. Sometimes you have a crappy day, sometimes you have a great day, but like it's not really about that. It's actually just about putting in the miles and putting in the training so that when you do show up, you can approach the marathon and do great. And it might not be your goal time, but you're going to do what you think is an excellent effort. And that's all you can do. And so like the only other thing that I would add to it would be just like what I tried to do personally is actually train myself that I could show up on any day and do a marathon if I truly had to. And so that's the thing, like you got to put in the work and always make sure that you're looking out for kind of what's going on around you to be aware of like your environment and make sure that you can show up on any day and run a race if you need to. And so like that's what I took from what you just said, and hopefully that's helpful for people out there.
I love
it. We're all ready to run the race and run the marathon. Would love to hear from you, Julie, both how you operate at the next level and also lean to how do you break into a head of product marketing role as you transition from leading product marketing for ads at Pinterest to overall leading product marketing and product ops as well. To hear more from you.
Yeah, of course. I'll start by sharing I am also a big fan of personality tests, Indy. So I've never heard of Working Genius, and I wrote a note down for myself. So thank you for the tip. I love them all. I've taken them, almost all of them. So that one's new for me. What I would say, both for myself, like a standard I hold myself to, but also advice I give to my team about operating at the next level is I really look for people on my team who have exceptionally high judgment. And I think and to be a leader of any function, but especially in product marketing, because we sit across so many things in the org and the purview we often have, or I have in my role is like, I'm involved in like almost all of the big decision, like product decisions and, legal and marketing implications, that I think the biggest leverage you have as a product marketer first and foremost is to build deep relationships with your partners and understand what they care about so that you can then understand their point of view and the organizational dynamics for how you can influence the direction that you want a decision or outcome to go in. Because as PMMs, we often don't have all of the resources or even the authority. Like we're not the final decision maker on product strategy. We're not the final decision maker on brand campaign. We're not the final decision maker on like the legal policies that we might be updating, but we should know a lot about, or like the sales go to market, but we should know about and have a perspective and also know the perspective of our partners. And so the more you can, like I spend a lot of my time really trying to understand what do the different functions and leaders in those functions care about? Like what keeps them up at night? What are they really optimizing for? What's the problem that they want to solve? So that I can come to a conclusion that accounts for all of the various different data points and perspectives and usually try to get to the right one. And so I see that people on my team who have an ability to really traverse the organization dynamics and understand the org dynamics well, and then use that to come to really great recommendations or conclusions are often the ones I trust and give more responsibility to very quickly. And they move up very fast in their careers. And that's always something I prioritize. So I always think it's a great use of time having one-on-ones with the right people. And I think I've found earlier in my career, I was kind of afraid to like ask for one-on-ones with certain leaders. And I always thought I needed to come in with like a really buttoned up, detailed one-on-one doc and go like straight into everything I was asking for. And I actually think what I've learned over time is that one, it's best to have deep relationships with people before you need something from them. So I think it's good to like spend the time with your partners, getting to know them, what they care about, who they are, you know, what their family life is like, common things, like things you have in common. I'm a relator as one of my strengths finder strengths. And so like, that's natural to me. And then jump into the work and say like, here's what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? And really just get them talking and understanding what's top of mind for them. What do they care about? What's their perspective on this issue? And the more you can do that, the better, like, I think just the better decisions you're going to make because you understand what's going on across different parts of the company. So that's like where I spend my time. And I also encourage my team to do that. And it ultimately leads to like good judgment. I think it's well worth the time. So that would be my advice on kind of like how to raise and where to spend your time as you raise in your career. And then I think, Brianne, to your second question, you know, I have a deep background in ad tech and advertising. I spent most of my career there. I built out the product marketing org for Amazon advertising. Before that, I was at Comscore, which is a digital ad measurement company. And then I was at media companies and ad tech companies prior to that. And so, you know, I'd never worked on the a consumer facing product and only on the consumer side. I think Pinterest is really unique in that there's so much dependency between the consumer experience and how we monetize that experience through ads. So I think I was just kind of well positioned, you know, to try and solve some of those challenges. One of the things as I've grown in my career is I feel really strongly about how product marketing functions should operate and where they have leverage and the value that they provide. And so I've been really clear ever since I joined Pinterest, what that vision is and the role that I want product marketing to play. And so I think that helped to then come to a decision that it makes sense, at least at this stage in our company, for us to have combined the function. We have kind of similar functional leaders across design and engineering and data science, for example. Every company does it very differently though. Like, you know, Amazon does not have a lot of centralization. So I think it really matters what company you're at and the problem that they're trying to solve. And product marketing is kind of a tough function in that like it's different at every single company I've ever worked in. It doesn't sit in the same part of the org. Everyone thinks it does a different thing. And so as a product marketing leader, like my first job is to be really clear about my vision for product marketing and make sure product and other leaders are aligned and understand that. And I think if you do that well, it gives you leverage and authority to go and like solve the problems that you want to. And so that's kind of what I think I've focused on to get me where I am today.
Thanks for sharing that. And what I love about these answers, when you think about being open, being curious, and all these pieces of building relationships, it's not a checklist. Like, I need to do X, I need to do Y. It's a lot of the softer things that we lean into that might not come to the surface day one or day two, but come from, as Vanessa mentioned, looking on the balcony. That's when these things often surface. And so taking that time. And all of you mentioned between your running, parent, leading a full-time job, so much going on, but you've gotten to the roles you are in now because you've continued to invest in yourself. And so how do you continue to progress as a product marketer in the role when you have so much going on? And Indy, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, a great question, Brianne. You know, I think there's always, you know, I'm a believer. This is something my dad taught me early on, was like, he told me, you know, there's no end to learning, right? And I think if you find a time or a way for you to kind of just, you know, sharpen the saw in different ways, right? And like, that's how you develop, right? There's obviously the development that comes from your career responsibilities, you know, rising up the ranks, those kind of things, right? But But I think it's going back to cultivating what's made you successful in the first place, curiosity, perspective that you can bring at the table, empathy, whatever those qualities are. I talked about my dad. Let me give a shout out to my mom. She told me one day that, books are like software updates for your brain. So what I do try to do in my spare time is I try to read, like, both a mix of business books, but also like fiction as well. Because at the end of the day, sometimes, like, one of my favorite authors is like this British Bengali woman called Jhumpa Lahiri. So The Namesake, The Interpreter of Maladies, just beautiful writing. And like sometimes I look at the writing and I'm like, wow, this is going to help me elevate my game, like, and as a storyteller and those kind of things. So I would say, whatever you geek out on in your spare time, geek out on it more, because I think that will only sharpen the perspective, the special ingredient that you bring to the table. And, I think cultivating that, being and sharpening the saw in your own way, I think can go a long way. So I would say amid the busyness, right, with like a why, I would say, yeah, just make sure that, when you turn off work, that you can turn on the other things that will round out your personality, get you to be, super invested in, like, hobbies and interests, those kind of things. But yeah, I would say be open to learning more, right? Like, I think it's Satya Nadella, right? When he came to Microsoft, he changed the company to a growth mindset company, right? And going from saying it's better to be, I think, a learn-it-all than a know-it-all, right? And I think even operating at the levels that we are, right? Like, I'm sure Vanessa, Julie, there's probably not a day that goes by where we're like, hey, I just had a meeting with this young marketer in some team and I actually learned something, right? And so on. So I think, to me, there's no end to learning.
Yeah. Julie, do you want to share more?
Yeah, and just to clarify the question, Brianne, is it, how we spend our time outside of work, or I loved Indy's answer, but just to make sure I'm building on.
Yeah, how do you progress as a product marketer? And I just use, because everyone here has so much going on. So you think about doing your J job and learning and growing. So how do you, what are the tactical things that you do to continue to learn and grow and progress as a product marketer?
Yeah, well, okay. Thank you for reclarifying. Well, I think, so one thing I did, especially when I took over the consumer product marketing org at Pinterest, is I reached out to a lot of people either in my own network or my network's network and asked for like 15 or 20 minutes of their time. So even people I didn't know, but people who have led large product marketing teams at Meta, at YouTube, at Google, like peer set companies who I admired and who had what I viewed as really strong consumer product marketing approaches. Indy, maybe we should talk because you might be one of them too on the consumer side. And I just asked them, I had a bunch of questions and kind of reached out and asked them for advice and specifically, like, how have you solved this challenge of in product marketing and experimentation in the app to drive comprehension, or what do you think is the right way in how you've been working with the consumer product org? So I had kind of a set of questions and just really wanted to crowdsource. I think ShareBird actually does this really well. I wish I had used ShareBird at the time. But I think it's good to ask and lean into your network to understand how different peers and peer companies and peer leaders are solving similar challenges to the ones that you solved. So I think you get to a certain point in your career where you've experienced a lot, and it's what's important is how you apply historical experience to new context, and not saying like, okay, well, we did it this way at Amazon, or we did it this way at Google, we should do that this way here, and more identifying what did I learn from that experience that worked and what's relevant in this current experience that I can apply in the unique new scenario that I'm in. And so I think it's this building of playbooks. Like, I have a bunch of playbooks where I'm like, I've seen this problem before. It kind of smells and looks like this. I've seen how this plays out. I can kind of predict what's going to happen next, but like, here's how it might be slightly different in this context. And when I don't have a playbook, so when I'm in a scenario where I'm like, I don't have a playbook to pull from in my own experience, I go ask people who have lived through similar experiences. I've even called a former colleague very recently at Amazon not a product marketing challenge, but just a business challenge that we're having. I'm like, hey, I know we solved this before. Can you remind me what were the steps that you took? And I found that people are very willing to help. You don't ask them for their work, but you ask them like, how did you approach the problem? What did you learn? What should I be considering here? And that's really helped me, get myself out of some tricky challenges, or just to stay fresh on what other people are doing.
Thanks for sharing that. Alex, head of ShareBoard, introduced me to someone when I was starting a new role, and we had every other month we caught up, and it was either like therapy, going through a challenge or something. So having that network of peers to think through and solve challenges with is so valuable. Anything else folks want to add before we go to the next question?
Can I maybe just add one thing, just because we were talking about the networking aspect is, I think, and one of you said this earlier, right? Like your network is your net worth. You have to build it before you need it. Just to build on Julie's point, I remember when we were at Box and we were thinking about pricing our APIs, right? This was our first time going into the market with those kind of things. And, at the time we were partnering with Twilio, so Vanessa, right? Like Jeff Lawson and his team. And I think Aaron Levy just said, well, go talk to Jeff, and then so my GM and I, we went to the Twilio offices, which, like the ones from maybe like 10 years ago. And I still remember to this day, like in 30 minutes, we got from like Jeff, like such valuable input. It like accelerated our go-to-market, our thinking by like 6 months, right? And that's the type of stuff where like, don't think that you have to solve everything yourself, right? Like the way you can kind of get ahead and develop is by going to these practitioners, these people who have kind of built these things before. So yeah, don't underestimate the power of a great conversation.
Yeah.
And I would just add, in the age of AI, like never ever start with a blank sheet of paper. So like what you can get from a GPT or like some tool like that will probably take you 50, 60, 70% of the way, right? Like I know, we've got to be cognizant of all of the rules around like how we use them in the workplace, but I think genuinely nobody should be starting from ground zero. So your network plus like the soft skills and the way that you approach the problem, your own critical thinking. And like, if like Julie, you mentioned when you just have no idea, like I haven't seen this problem before, like where do I start? Like what ingredients do I need? I always like try and start with a hypothesis that I want to break down. And so like, I think all of us as leaders have the discipline now to really think through, okay, well, maybe I haven't seen this problem before, but like, what is my hypothesis? And do I have a good one? And if I don't, then I spend the time on actually building the hypothesis and making sure that that looks really good. And then it's actually something that everybody that needs to agree or align on that hypothesis is in full agreement first before you even start anything, right? Because otherwise you can quickly go down the wrong path. And so a lot of that just discipline and being a good critical thinker and just approaching a problem with curiosity is kind of all really good. In addition to asking your network, asking an AI, like asking the internet, whatever, you can find the answers pretty easily these days.
Yeah, and as we're going to have people jump in, add your questions, thumbs up ones that you want to hear answered as we go to the live questions here. All super helpful insights, especially from these folks who are so busy that have continued to progress their career. So as we crowdsource some questions here from the crowd, first one coming up is, how do you think about managing up? And I will also add around, knowing that we're product marketers and the cross-functional relationships that Julie has alluded to are so important. So how do you manage up and around as your career develops? Balancing your strategy, seeking, that direction from leaders as well. Who wants to kick this one off?
I can start, and then would love some insights from Julie and Indy on this one. When I first started at Twilio, I had an amazing CMO, Sarah Varney, and she had the best advice, which was always market your marketing. And if you're doing something that has value to the organization, if nobody knows about it, then it's probably like not going to get the visibility or love or appreciation or anything. And so you really have to think through, okay, I'm solving this great problem. We had these great results. I want to make sure that I'm actually telling people inside the company that all of that was really great work and it was hugely valuable. So like, that's kind of my number one thing is like, if you aren't doing that, then you're not necessarily managing up. I think it's like managing everywhere versus managing up. Like that's kind of step number one, I would say. Managing up is like showing up every day, like we were saying, like get your miles in every day, which also means like making sure that you have a very clear understanding of your priorities every day. If your manager is asking you to do something, you make it a priority to get that thing done, and like you focus on the other things that are really important, and you know, like you go and do those things. At a senior level, and how you keep kind of growing through the organization, you'll start to see the dynamic shift between like what your manager gives you and what you decide you should be working on, because you can see more opportunity out there. And so I think like the dynamic will shift as you kind of move up in your career, and you should be cognizant of what that balance looks like. If you want to be treated as a more senior resource, then like what are the ideas that you have? Like, how are you presenting those ideas to your leadership team? How are you thinking through, like, what opportunities do we have that we could explore that we're not looking at today? And so those are the kind of tools and tactics that I would suggest you take a look at.
Yeah, I love marketing your marketing. I always say you got to product marketing, especially in companies when people don't understand what it is. So taking our job both internally and externally. Indy, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I love what you said about internal marketing. Like so much of that was true. I actually worked with Sarah at Salesforce, and you know, building our team. Like the half of the problem was internal exposure, right? So I think she was quite good at that. You know, I would say, and I know Brianne, you talked about managing around as well, right? Like I think, you know, just to build on the one point on managing up is I think, you know, especially as when you become like more of a senior leader, I think by the time your manager, which sometimes is going to be the CEO or the CMO, right? By the time they ask you, it might be already too late, right? So yeah, I think you have to learn how to anticipate. And of course, it comes with like personality, right? Like if there's like a foundation of trust, right? You want to do everything that like keeps on building that trust. And sometimes, yes, it's working, taking the extra mile and kind of being proactive about saying like it's the marketing of the marketing, but it's also anticipating some of those needs, right? Or when there's an issue, don't just say there's an issue, say like, here's the issue, here are the 3 things I've been thinking about to solve this, right? Like, but what's your take, you know? And then that unlocks that opportunity for you them to say like, oh, Indy's on top of it, but he wants my advice on this, right? But I would say, yeah, by the time you're asked, it might already be too late, and you can course correct, but try and get in that pattern of being ahead of those questions. Now, managing around, I know we were touching on this, was I think, you know, product marketing in my mind is always that quintessential like servant leader in an organization, right? Like we're so cross-functional, but engineers are going to engineer, product is going to product, right? Like sales is going to sales, right? Like and you know, you don't have that authority over them. But what I've often found a way in which you can manage around is, you know, people often say product marketing doesn't have a seat at the table, right? And that can happen, right? But I think it's more of a notion of like, you know, the perception that there's no seat at the table. Sometimes there's just no table, right? And I think it's incumbent on you, I think as a product marketer, going back to the analogy of being at the balcony, having that vantage point, is create that table, right? Because for example, at Canva, we're very early in what we're doing on the ecosystem side of the business. And, you know, I don't want to come in assuming that everybody has thought about those things. And I don't want to come in assuming that I have a playbook either that's transferable. But organically, I've just kind of created conversations, tables, so to speak, around things. And people are like, oh my God, we'd never thought about it that way. Like, let's, you know, what else can we do there? And then there's some other areas where like, I'll come in and say, have we thought about this? And then they say, yes, go talk to so-and-so. So managing around, especially when you're growing at a growing company, every day somebody else is going to come in and you know like and own a piece of like the, you know, the overall execution. So I think it's incumbent on you, for whether you're a product marketer or not, to think about like, what are those conversations I want to have, and if I don't think I have a seat at the table, let me make sure that at least there is a table.
Yeah, I love that. I would also, the thing about anticipating, I always tell when we're crafting internal communication, I always ask the team the question, what questions do you think we'll get back? And let's answer them proactively in the spirit of anticipation. So I love that piece. And Julie, would love to hear from you.
I feel like Vanessa and Indy really nailed it. The advice is spot on. I'm trying to think what new things I would add. I love the, you know, create the table analogy, Indy. I've often talked about it, but not in that specific, succinct way. So I'm totally gonna take that. I agree with that advice too. And I often say to my team, like, it's not enough to do the work. We have to bring everyone along and force the debate and conversation. So I often might not be the owner of the strategy or the final decision maker, but it's like our job to pull all of the pieces together and create the forum to raise the issue and have the conversation and discussion. And like, that's the job. And so I think people forget about that sometimes, that like they have to be solving all of the issues. And in reality, we don't have to be solving all of the issues. We have to recognize that there are issues, call them out, bring the right stakeholders together in a room to solve it, and like facilitate the conversation. And that's what good looks like oftentimes when there's really challenging issues. So I totally love the create the table recommendation. I also think like just what I appreciate in managing up is, there's so much context switching that we all do as leaders, but also our leaders do even more so probably than us. And so I think having empathy for that, and if you're trying to manage up to your leader, the exec summary or the TLDR is really important, and really filtering out what is the takeaway. Like, what is actually the thing that is important for them to know that I want them to be left with? And let me lead with, like, let me start there. It's like the inverted triangle of communication, like start with the point and then go back and share some of the thinking or summary that got you to that point. I think oftentimes we talk about concise communication as a really critical skill in any leadership role, but especially in product marketing. And I think if you're trying to manage up, you have to have good judgment to know what matters, what's going to show up on your boss's desk that you anticipate in advance, and you let them know, because them getting surprised is never a good thing. And two, like, what do you want them to know that matters? Like, what's the point you're trying to make, and how can you land it so that it's either they know they have a recommendation or they can take it to the next level. And so I always appreciate when people come to me with like really clear perspective of like, here's this, what I'm seeing, here's what I'm going to do about it. Here are the next steps. So I think getting really good at filtering yourself in preparation for bigger meetings or connections with your boss or your direct leader is like a great way, or kind of specific thing you could do to better manage up.
Yeah, I love that, Julie. In a previous company, in all of our updates, we had a section where we had to answer the question, why this matters. And it was a great forcing function. And it's like, in the spirit of the TLDR, how do you include that naturally in all the updates? Less eloquent way to say that is, so what? Like, so what? Why does this matter at the end of the day? And really break through that noise with the leaders to make it easier and that helps everyone involved. So it's always a win-win. So on to our next question. There's hundreds of people out there that want to be us, that want to be you. What advice do you have to transition to a product marketing role from someone that's more of a generalist marketing background? What are the qualifications that make them stand out to get hired? And Vanessa, I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I think we haven't really talked about hard and soft skills. And the hard part about product marketing is it really depends on what you're looking for at the time for the person in the role, right? Like, we cover so much ground in our roles in product marketing. And so sometimes it is a little bit situational dependent, like, where is this person going to sit in the organization? What are they going to look after? And so that will typically determine the kind of skill set that you're looking for and potentially the background. What I have found as a leader over time is that people with non-traditional backgrounds usually are extremely successful in product marketing, because they bring the context of other parts of the business or other perspectives into the organization, right? Like, I've had someone from like campaigns and somebody from ad sales, and so, people just from totally different backgrounds that have come in and like been amazing product marketers. And so I think like really just I'm just trying to like remember what the rest of the question is, and I don't know whether the one that's highlighted right now is the same question. But I think like the way to make yourself stand out, I'll just say, to me, is like, make sure it's very clear to me when I start reading your resume, or like my recruiters start reading your resume, that you have the required skills to first like meet the job description. Like, we've started hiring like for a few roles recently, and we had 500 applications within like a couple of days. Like, there's a lot of stuff going out there right now, and I think like it's hard for anybody that's looking for a role. Just make sure that your qualifications and the skills that you bring and the way that you communicate is super important to bring that to the fore in your application. And also sort of similar to Julie's answer earlier, like network in and around the organization to try and find another way in. Like if you are just relying on applying online, then you're kind of missing an opportunity to really put yourself forward for the role. And so part of our job is as PMMs and PMM leaders is dot connecting. So like I would suggest, like, if you can show and demonstrate a good ability to be able to do that, then I think that sets you apart as well.
Yeah, Indy, do you want to share your thoughts?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think no doubt, like, especially right now, with still, these layoffs happening left and right, like even just holding your job is not, you can't take it for granted, right? But if you want to move up or make a different move, like a career change, and especially going from non-PMM to PMM, I would say think about what's the story you want to tell about yourself, right? Is your LinkedIn, LinkedIn has kind of supplanted the resume. You still need to work on a resume, but you want to make sure that you can start telling your own, work on your personal brand, right? To kind of stand out. So, plus one to what Vanessa was saying about, like, getting in through like a network, I think just doom applying, right? Like, application after application, right? Like it's, I think we've all been there and it sucks, right? And in this environment, it doesn't make any sense, right? Whatever edge you can bring to the table in terms of getting a warm intro into a company, whether they have a job or not, just put yourself out there. And I think you'll learn, if you're not a natural storyteller, or like if you don't have a personal brand, even those conversations will help you really cement what you're going after and why, and what you can bring to the table. So I would say leverage your network, think about your personal brand, right? Like in LinkedIn, I mean, basically it's now today, I mean, I have a friend called, he's very well known in the product marketing circles, Robin Daniels. He's like, every day he posts something on LinkedIn, and I don't know how he does it, but he does, right? And I'm not saying you need to do that, but if you have something where you can put in your own spin, your own flavor, that's how you can start building your brand. Because people, when I get a resume, I'll take a look at the resume, but I'm like, okay, how does this person, if they want to be a product marketer, how are they presenting themselves to the world, right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to be in charge of a product, they're going to be in charge of an audience, they're going to be in charge of like a specific remit, they're going to have to be an internal champion within the company, right? So demonstrate to me through your personal brand or through how you show up, whether you have the qualities. Like the three attributes I look for in a product marketer are curiosity, craft, and championing, right? The ability to be an ambassador for the product, the audience that you're working on. And if I don't see that, and if you're not on LinkedIn, or if I can't find anything where you've put yourself out there to claim those attributes, it'll be a tough sell, right? I mean, a warm intro is great, and I will certainly look for those signals. But think about what's going to make you stand out, and you don't have to be somebody you're not. Show me who you are, and that you have a passion for communication and for the craft of product marketing.
Yeah. And Vanessa, or sorry, Julie, do you want to bring us home? We got one more minute here.
Yeah. And again, what can I add? Because I agree with all of the advice. I think, Vanessa touched on this, but I think there's hard skills and soft skills that are needed for every job anyway, but especially for product marketing. I think the hard skills, like there's times when I'm hiring for jobs where I'm like, I need someone with this experience or like has this expertise, like specific product expertise. It's rare. I hope, I try not to always hire for that. And I find that even if you don't have that exact expertise, if you have something that's tangential or related, that's really helpful to highlight. And if you've done deep research. So I'm always really impressed when people come in interviews and might not have been a product marketer in X, but they understand the industry, they understand the trends and what's happening in the space, the role that the company that I work for could be playing. They have really good questions about the problems that we're experiencing and have some early thinking about how we might solve them. You don't need to have been in the industry or have done the job to like do the preparation. So definitely I can tell right away when someone is like deeply prepared, have read our earnings reports, our investor analysts, like understand the business. I'm very impressed by that. So without the hard skills, that's how you can make up for that gap. And then I think the soft skills are very critical in an interview. And especially Indy was touching on this, but your ability to communicate. I often in an interview, I'll ask a probing question. So if I think there's some people on my team who I've hired, but maybe people not, I always ask the first question in an interview, like, give me a 2-minute summary of your experience and why you think you're relevant for this role. And I clarify 2 minutes because people do not usually follow it. And so it's actually really helpful to filter out people who can, to Indy's point, come with a really clear story about who they are, their brand, what they're known for, and what they think they can bring to the role, and they stop themselves because it shows good self-control, awareness, like situational awareness, and concise communication. Such a big part of our job. And so that skill is like number one for me. If someone's not an effective communicator in an interview, I'm like, they're not like, I can't move forward. And you don't have to have been a product marketer to be really good at that. So I think there's definitely ways in without exact experience.
Yeah, what a wealth of knowledge from these product marketing leaders, and all your success being able to share it with others. A few things that come up are a lot around the soft skills, curiosity, bringing a point of view. You're not alone. Lean into your network, lean into folks at your company. And in the spirit of running, practice perfect makes practice. You know, get in there and show up. And with that, I hand it over to Alex.